I think as a leader, you've got to be cautious, and I fell into this trap early about wanting your team to recent experience with some of the European construction companies and the level of sustainability focus they have. It really has highlighted that Australia is, in my opinion, particularly in the construction and building industry, is a little reflect, and you think, well, how much longer can we mine natural resources, or how much longer can the pressures that we put on our resources sustain what we're trying to achieve? And that's if we don't take action, and if we don't make some crucial decisions now.
What if technology is the key to the sustainability gap between Australia and the rest of the world? In this episode of Building Doors, we're joined by Jock Macfarlane, a voice calling for smarter, greener and more future-focused construction. Jock believes that while Australia may lag in sustainability, we have the tools to leap ahead if we choose to use them. From embedding sustainability into tender processes to leveraging AI for the heavy lifting in project admin, Jock unpacks the structural changes that could reshape our industry. It's not just about green talk, it's about making it profitable, measurable and practical. We'll also explore the personal side of career planning and how looking at your work and your values can create longevity in a career. And we talk about diversity and how it isn't just a business goal, but a business imperative. If you're working on major infrastructure leading teams or rethinking your place in the industry, this could be the conversation to change how you build, lead, and think. Welcome to Building Doors. So, welcome to the Building Doors podcast, Jock. You have been a widely actually recommended guest to come on the podcast. So long before your national environmental and sustainability role that you're in now, I think one of the messages that's come through about you is that you are very authentic as a leader, that you champion diversity in your own way as well within your role and have been really pivotal in that. And that also you're quite innovative in the sustainability environmental space. So I was very keen to get you on as a guest. And I do take people's feedback on boards when they put forward a guest because, you know, it's people you don't always know about that have a lot of insights and stories to share. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honour and a pleasure. And it's nice to know that maybe some of that hard work, there's some good feedback, because I think sometimes you don't really realise, you know, whether your work's having an impact or people think positively about you. So, great to be here, and looking forward to having a bit of a chat.
Okay, so I want to start with where all it came from. So I'm on good authority that you were booted out of Mount Isa for being a rat bag to babysit, and then you got sent to Mackay. Is that the full story, or tell me the story of where it all began for you?
Oh, it's probably not the full story. It's probably, you know, my mum would say I'd never put a wrong foot anywhere. But I was a hard kid to look after when I was younger. There's no denying that. Definitely not booted out of Mount Isa though. But Dad saw an opportunity to maybe move us to somewhere, a little bit more, with more opportunity, I guess is how he would explain it. So yes, difficult kid to look after, that's for sure. Didn't really like watching TV, always liked to be outside. We were very fortunate growing up, having opportunities to, school holidays on large cattle farms and the like. So, moved to Mackay after a good upbringing in Mount Isa, I would say, one that many kids probably didn't have the opportunity to have. And, moved to Mackay for primary school and secondary school before moving down to Brisbane for university. So, yeah.
What were some of those qualities you had as a kid as well? Because I'm sure parents don't always realise when they've got young kids that are super active and things like that as well, that there's some of those qualities are going to make them successful in the workforce later on. So what are some of those qualities you had as a kid that kind of you use now?
Yeah, I think it probably wasn't as accepted for kids to have a lot of high energy maybe when I was coming through the schooling system. But I was very fortunate to have some great teachers and also my parents who, found avenues for me to explore and be curious as opposed to maybe being put in a box. So, and I think now looking back, and I think at the time you don't really realise, and parents do struggle with that, but I think kids with high energy generally are able to process more and they get more exposure because they're more curious. And I think as a parent now of a young daughter, I think I can see now that me being high energy, younger, it really exposed me to a lot of opportunities because I was always looking for something to do. And I think now as a professional, my level of exposure has been extremely high. Maybe sometimes I make decisions without fully thinking them through. My wife will often say, "What have I agreed to now?" So I'm getting better at consulting. But, for me, I very rarely say no. And I think that's mostly good. It's really exposed me to a lot of things in life. And yeah, I think as a high energy kid, that's generally what was happening. Mum and dad kept me busy to probably keep me out of trouble ultimately, but they were very good at supporting that.
I've got a very similar boy myself, and he's high energy, super curious. And what I notice a lot of it is getting in sports, getting out, like we're on acreage and things like that as well, getting him out and about, feeding animals, doing all that sort of stuff. So what were some of the things that you did as a kid to keep busy?
Yeah, so sport is a great avenue for, I guess, high energy kids to obviously burn some of that energy, but also express themselves as well. So yeah, mum and dad were really good at sport. I think I was playing 3 or 4 sports at once. But similar, I sort of said earlier, had great exposure to the rural life. We lived out of town for a majority of my upbringing. So, I was always up early. I was probably up at the crack of dawn, really. I would go off and check my yabby traps or something like that.
Yeah.
My dad was a shift worker, so he would get home and, maybe we would go hunting at night or something like that, or he'd take me out, fishing or something like that. So yeah, it was more of an outdoors life. And I think that's probably how I've ended up where I have, within the construction industry, but also in the environmental and sustainability industry as well. But they were very good at keeping me busy. Yeah.
I always believe that people that love that outdoors, that love sport, are so well suited to construction and infrastructure, particularly in the contracting side. Tell me about what it was that hooked you into the industry. Like for people that are listening and considering it too, what hooked you into it?
Yeah, I think like now I'm a bit older, I've probably looked into why I've done what I've done. Like I think earlier in life I was probably more just doing what came up and, like I said, never really said no to anything. I think high energy people like that, the consistent change, but they're looking for more reward pathways as well, as opposed to maybe risk or, I guess level of importance. It's more about the reward pathway. And I think for me, construction is that constant changing environment that it doesn't lock you into a cubicle. And for me, I think it's that changing environment, it's the changing aspect each day. It's the problem solving. And I found there's 2 things, right? There's like the environment that you're working in, but it's also the people you're working with. And I think those combined is generally what's attractive about construction, because there's so many non-attractive aspects of construction as well. But I think, throughout my career, I've worked out now later in life, these are the reasons why construction's been such an appealing industry for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to ask this because it's a question that comes up with us all the time, and it's particularly as the next generation of engineers, environmental sustainability and safety come through too. How did you balance the hours? How did you balance the demands and hours with having a life, looking after your fitness, looking after your health? How did you keep it all balanced as you were going through your career?
I think I've probably not done it so well over time. And I think we can all be guilty of that. To the point where I took a break from construction.
Wow.
because of the hours and the lifestyle. But what I realized that during that break is that how much I actually missed it. But look, I think as you progress your career, you get better at allocating time and energy to what's important. And then you begin to realize what's important to you. So when I had my daughter, I realized how important my health and well-being was. And I became significantly better at allocating my time day to day to important tasks and maybe blocking out some of that noise. But that comes with time and that comes with experience within the industry. And maybe we're losing people out of the industry before they are able to develop those skills.
Yeah.
And that maybe that self-awareness and self-reflection on, what's important and what's not. So for me now, it's about allocating time to high-risk items, what's important, trying to block out some of that noise. And look, each week can be difficult. Some weeks are better than others, but I think you can't be too hard on yourself either.
What did you learn when you had the break? What perspective did you gain there? What did you learn about yourself and about what you wanted out of life?
Yeah, so early in my career, I was probably extremely too focused. Didn't really allocate time for holidays. Didn't allocate time for doing the things I enjoyed. So put things into perspective a little bit for me. I just, at that point in time, we were working 6 days a week, and it was just for years on end. And it gave me time to think and, understand what I really wanted to achieve. But it also made me reconsider at that stage of my life, maybe I was taking myself a little bit too seriously, maybe taking my career progression a little bit too seriously as well, and not allocating enough time to myself and my family. So it made me rethink when I came back and rejoined the industry on who I wanted to be and how I really wanted to go about my day-to-day business. It put things into perspective, really. Yep.
How did you change after you came back? What did you do differently to get that, when you gain that perspective? Obviously now you've not only come back to the industry, but progressed into a national role and in a leadership role as well. So I would say you've been a success in the industry. So what changed? What did you tangibly do to go, this is going to be different if I'm going to sustain a career here?
Yeah, I what you mentioned earlier was a little bit better work-life balance. But again, I probably had to go through that to understand what that really meant. And I think sometimes we don't quite understand what work-life balance is or what's important to us. And I probably had to go through that. So, my whole thing is I can generally dictate my start time. I can't really dictate my end time within construction because things pop up, right? So, I'm very good at starting my morning right now. I put some boundaries around what I'm willing to do work-wise, provided it's not super important. Obviously, in certain roles and leadership roles, there are things that pop up and you do have to sometimes break down those barriers. But I was better at managing my time. I was better at managing people in general, and just better allocating time to myself or times to other things other than work. So I was probably overvaluing my career and what my job meant to me, and maybe not putting enough focus and value on other things outside of work.
I love why you talk about that as well, because when you are high energy and you are very driven and achievement orientated, it just feels natural to focus on work. It does, because the more you put in, the more I put in, the more I'm going to, succeed. But then if you don't have your health and if you don't have that balance with your family, it's a fast road to burnout. Like there is no way to keep at that pace and continue to thrive. So I'm glad that you learned that balance as well early on. I think a lot of people listening would resonate with going through that themselves.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, it's that continual dopamine or that continual reward pathway. The harder you work, the more feedback you get, right? And it's about trying to manage that. And yeah, I think that's important.
Because you know what it is as well? In construction, there's always tasks, because everything's like, we need this now. And you get a dopamine hit once you get stuff done. If you become that person who gets stuff done, you get a dopamine hit. Now, with your family, there's not a lot of dopamine hit with little kids, right? Like, it's the long game, right? Investing in that time, investing in being there, even if your kid's being a jerk or you're going through teething or whatever you might be going through. So I think that's the adjustment too. If you've gone through life and you've had that success in your career-wise, you have a family and everything sort of shifts. We see that, definitely.
Yeah, and construction's one of those environments where, I often reflect, and I've been through some really big projects, and at the time it's one of those things where you just don't know when you're going to get to the job, but for whatever reason you stay, and you then reflect 10 years on, and it's like that was one of the best projects ever, and you talk about it, and it's because you're all in it together. And if everyone's doing 12, 14-hour days, you're there because you feel part of that culture and that. And I think later in life, you begin to realize it's okay to leave early if you've got your job done or you've achieved your task. But it can become quite an environment, an atmosphere. Yeah, and it's immediate rewards, like you're saying. With kids, it's, you look at phases of life as opposed to individual events, where construction's about individual events or adversity that you overcome as a project team.
How do you now, knowing everything that you know, and you know that on projects you can get that hook to that 12 to 14-hour days, you've grown a team now and you've got a team on projects. How do you help them balance their life as well? Or is that something that, is there a role in leadership to help that with that balance, do you think? Or is it more the onus on the individual?
I think as a leader, you've got to be cautious, and I fell into this trap early about wanting your team to maybe replicate how you see things or how you would operate.
Mm.
I think it's really important not to. I think as a leader, you may go through that. I definitely did. But I think as a leader, you've got sort of two tasks. One is helping people achieve their own goals and understanding their own personalities or how they want to operate. I think secondly, it's about providing the resource and the support for them to achieve that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the balance. It's a hard balance to achieve.
Yeah.
But your role as a leader is to help people understand that, because they may not have been through that and may not have experienced that. So it's about highlighting maybe what they're going through. They may not, because you're sitting a little bit further back. You can see what they're going through and helping them with that from your experience.
Mm.
But it's important not to push how you would like to operate either, because every
Yeah.
personality is different.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's fascinating as well. People say flexibility, and I was doing a leadership role recently, and one of the questions that we always ask is, what does flexibility mean to you? Because it's different for everybody, right? We had one lady, she said flexibility meant going to an assembly once a month for her kids, but she didn't want to work from home. She liked being in the office. That was her definition of flexibility. Whereas other people say flexibility is 2 days a week from home. So I think that's great that you are letting them shape what they want their work life to look like and their home life too, because it's so different. You think one word means the same thing to everyone. It really does not.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And I think, your flexibility example is a perfect example of that.
So tell me a bit about, firstly, speaking of not taking yourself so seriously, I do need to know with running, does the outfit you wear running, does the outfit, like I have heard that crop tops and headbands help make people go faster. And being a sporty guy, I just wanted to know, does the outfit you wear make a difference?
Absolute stitch up. But, you got to be confident in what you wear.
Yeah.
And, I've, others who may, outside of here, may cast judgment on what I like to wear when I run. It's all about being confident in who you are.
Yep.
And maybe they lack that confidence. I'm not sure. But yes, if you feel, you got to feel right to be able to keep up at
I think personally, Jock, I think the right outfit can go a long way. And I mean, some of the best athletes, they have to wear, what clothes they need to wear to help them go speedy and fast. So
that's right. Yeah. I'm just missing the speedy and fast bit. But at least, in my mind, it's the right outfit.
I think the outfit's got you halfway there. So, if for those listening, Jock has some really interesting. So, a few of his people that he works with have stitched him up a little bit because he loves to wear, some quite outgoing outfits when he goes for his runs. So, for the listeners, now I did promise I'd ask that. Now, let's get into the sustainability side of things.
Sure.
Let's get stuck into that. So, really want to talk about some of the initiatives that you want to see. So, we've spoken in the past around what needs to change for sustainability to be a focus in Australia versus the globe. So let's chat more about that. Tell me about your experience and what you're seeing with us at the moment as, in the sustainability space.
Yeah, so like I've been in the industry now just on 20 years. So I've seen a lot of change, and more recently a significant amount of change. Particularly with the new Australian standards the Australian sustainability standards, which have been implemented. So we are seeing change in Australia, which is actually nice for the industry, and hopefully there won't be as much, push from a sustainability perspective. Hopefully our government and the legislation will assist with that, which is half the battle. But I guess recent experience with some of the European construction companies and the level of sustainability focus they have, it really has highlighted that Australia is, in my opinion, particularly in the construction and building industry, is a little behind. And our uptake of sustainability initiatives is difficult at best, and generally not supportive of companies wanting to be, I guess, innovative or pushing the limits of sustainability. It's generally could be seen as a competitive, not a competitive advantage, but a disadvantage based on the lack of uptake from our clients that we're seeing. So yeah, Australia's a little bit slow. There is hope there, but would love to see a greater push and greater uptake of some of the sustainability initiatives that we see, particularly in Europe and the UK.
What is the difference? Why do you think we're slower on the uptake as, compared to the European countries?
I think there's a couple factors. Obviously, we've got a smaller offering, a smaller economy. In Europe, you've got multiple countries, multiple offering, and probably a larger private sector providing sustainability initiatives. But ideally, if we had a greater sustainability economy which provides offerings to our market, that wouldn't be such a barrier for construction companies. So I think in general we're a little bit slow with the uptake. I think maybe it's at this point in time we're seeing from our perspective, being a contractor, it is the cost to uptake sustainability initiatives. It's costly, and we're not necessarily seeing the rewards for being a leader in the sustainability space. So I think that's part of the slow uptake from purely speaking from a construction contractor perspective. I think from as Australia as a whole, I just think the adoption of that piece, we're very specific with our Australian standards and our specs, has definitely slowed the uptake for sustainability initiatives.
And I think when we look at tendering and things like that, is if it was something encouraged more in tendering, right? Like, and if it was a big percentage of why you were awarded projects, where it hits the bottom line, then that starts to really add pressure too. Like if you're going to potentially win on non-price because there's a sustainability component of that is 20% of something of winning a project. I think while we encourage projects just to be awarded just on price, we're never going to see, and I don't mean to be so negative, maybe not never, but it makes it real hard. And when you're operating, what the average contractor is operating sometimes a 1% to 3% margin, if sustainability is an expensive factor, regardless of whether we see it as something we want to do, the price, the cost,
That's right. And the reality is we work in a very low margin industry, which, if we want to talk about percentages, environment could be sub 5%, and then sustainability, 2 to 3%, well, there's your margin, right? So there's not a huge reward for contractors to be innovative. We're not seeing a huge non-price criteria placed on sustainability where it actually impacts the outcomes of being awarded the project. I'm not saying that there's nothing in procurement of contractors or in the tendering space. What I'm trying to say is it's not significant enough to essentially impact the outcome. Yes, there's a lot of information being asked for. We've seen a shift in that, but we're not seeing enough where contractors who want to be innovative, who want to push sustainability, we're not seeing enough in those contracts to be rewarded. To go and invest. And when we talk investment, we're talking long-term investment, we're talking vehicles, we're talking plant. These are long-term investment decisions. These aren't decisions that are made purely on one project. This is a 3, 5, 10-year investment for companies. So we need to see that pipeline of procurement and criteria to really push that investment for us.
Tell me about sustainability. I've got young children myself. You've got a young daughter. Why is it important to us? Like, why should we care? And I'm saying this, I do care, but I'm saying this for our listeners in the sector. Why should we care? Why does it matter? Do you feel?
Yeah, look, I think as a professional in this industry, sometimes I lose focus on why we care, like, because it just becomes so ingrained in what I do day to day. And since having a daughter, it really is about in securing her future and what that future looks like for her. And then you reflect and you think, well, how much longer can we mine natural resources, or how much longer can the pressures that we put on our resources sustain what we're trying to achieve? And that's if we don't take action, and if we don't make some crucial decisions now, then I often think, like, what future do our kids have? And I don't think it's a great future. I think we can see some of the impacts occurring now, and I'm not saying that I'm not pushing the climate change advocacy piece around the impacts that we've seen with natural disasters as being a direct result of that. What I'm saying is, what we can see is that, fish stocks are reducing, or natural resources are declining, and ultimately, if we don't make technological change, then that will decline, and we'll have to have some sort of alternative. Yeah.
Tell me about technological change. We know that it's something. I know it's something that you've been passionate about. Tell me a little bit more around some of the, with as much detail as you can, without giving away too much private ideas and things like that in your role. But tell us about what that role is going to be.
Yeah, obviously, huge movement with tech at the moment, which I think is super exciting, considering I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to tech. But what's exciting is seeing, the younger generation within our team, but also some of our older generation within our team pushing tech, right? And I don't see tech as replacing people's jobs, but what we know is we're not as efficient anymore when it comes to construction, and I think there's a lot of content on that. I don't need to go into that. But I think tech can play a role with making us more efficient, which means giving us more time to do what we're actually employed to do. What we know is that there's a lot more administration process when it comes to delivering projects now, whatever role you may be in: engineering, environment, sustainability, safety. I think tech can play a real role in reducing that administration. And I think that will allow people to focus on their actual jobs to deliver. But I think there's a secondary outcome there, and it's like people may get more enjoyment or more value out of their job by focusing on the things that matter, as opposed to the administrative burden that we see day to day in the environment and sustainability space.
So it also links really clearly to me with what you talked about before around, you took that break from your career and got, passionate about and clear about what was important. I think there's such a fear about technology taking people's job, whereas it's actually an enabler for people to do more of the things that matter to them, and influencing more in their roles rather than being tied up with so much admin. And the industry as a whole has a lot of admin. We see it from procurement, tendering. It's so heavy admin. So if we can relieve, I went recently through QMCA actually to a AI tendering sort of workshop where they were talking about, how that role of tendering where AI is going to play a part. So it's an interesting space.
It is, yeah. And I think AI can play a role, or tech can play a role in the pre-contracts tendering space, in your procurement space at project startup, and then delivery. And I think a lot of opportunities missed in construction because it's such a fast-paced environment, and you have to provide a cost benefit to doing something that's not aligned with the spec or is innovative. And if you don't have the time to deliver that, then these innovation and these ideas get passed up because we fall back to what we know and what we're comfortable with. And I think if you can take some of that administrative burden away from our people, we will get better innovation, we'll get better uptake, and more time to be innovative. Yeah.
You know what I'd love to see? And crazy idea, but wouldn't it be nice if we locked the margins that contractors would get for a project? And we said, whatever project you do, we'll look at value engineering, we'll look at sustainability, and we'll make sure you get a 10% margin so that your people can go home, well rested, that people are safer. I think that we need to start disrupting the way that we look at not only how we do projects and how technology is an enabler, but also how we award them, how the clients look at how they award them.
Completely. And I think, again, I'll just be completely selfish and dial in on sustainability.
Let's do it.
But, an environment that, we've seen some really great change over time with the environmental schedule, where contractors are forced to price a different schedule for different environmental aspects. excellent. We can get, reviewed on that process. What we now need to see is, like you're saying, is some fixed margins and some fixed agreements around the cost aspects. But now it would be great to start seeing some cost allocation for sustainability, whether that's alignment with the client's sustainability commitments, or whether that's for the contractors. But having some money allocated to those sustainability aspects, we're starting to see it. We'd like to see more of it. And then giving that flexibility so that, at tender time, you're not being, you're being rewarded. You're not at a disadvantage for having sustainability in your bid. It's a lock sum of money away based on maybe the material items for the project. And then when it comes to delivery, you then have to approach your client with your innovative solution or sustainability outcome, and that gets agreed, right? It then creates that collaboration piece that we've been pushing for so long.
Yep.
And we start getting sustainable outcomes, and you're not negatively impacted for being a sustainable business. And that's where we need to be.
One of the things that's always heartening to me about this industry is like so many people at different levels that have so many great ideas that if we get the clients to listen to it, especially when we're talking about collaborative contracting, which we know that through QMCA, TMR, everyone's been talking about that as a model with, fixing up Bruce and all the other work that's yet to come and the Olympics and everything as well. And I think that looking at it at a granular level and that making sure that the procurement process and the way that things are assessed non-price and price and what you just spoke about is going to be key. Because it's all well and good to talk about it, but it's money that's going to talk and make, because at the end of the day, businesses need to make money,
Completely, yeah. And what I love about the environment sustainability community is we're quite collaborative. There's not a whole lot of IP, right, that's going to lose you a job or be a significant advantage. In time, I'd like that to be the case. But we're great about sharing initiatives, but then we're not great at necessarily making them, a business as usual initiative that we could be achieving across the industry. So it's about harnessing that great energy that we have as environment and sustainability practitioners, but then how do we get that as business as usual? Yeah.
One of the things that I've also spoken with you about in the past is around diversity. So it's well known, and the listeners may not know, but it's well known within Georgiou and the sector that you've really championed and had what's the diversity like in your team? How many are female in your team?
In the Queensland team, we have about 70% females in our team. And across the national team, we would be 60 to 70%.
Which is really,
from memory, I think. Yeah.
Really impressive when you consider the challenge, we're up against in terms of getting, people into the sector and to study even in the first sense. So tell me really a bit more around how you did that and why diversity was a passion for you, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think initially maybe it was unconscious. I've got two sisters, and maybe it was an unconscious decision on my behalf or unconscious bias, if you want to call it that, around diversity. But I don't necessarily have a specific diversity target or agenda. For me, it's really is about choosing the best person for the job. But I think it's about being conscious around your decision-making process and making sure that you aren't being biased and making sure you don't have unconscious bias towards diversity in your team. I think that's super important, but it's one thing to then employ a more diverse team. It's second is then supporting that, right? So it's about maintaining that team and maintaining that diversity outside of the recruitment and hiring process. We've got some within my team at the moment in Queensland, some great long-termers, they're all female, who have been, with the business 7, 8, 9 years as well. So I think for me, it's then that support network. Again, I spoke about resourcing. When I say that, I mean like resourcing the expectation. So it's about supporting then females within the business once you've got them in the job. And I think depending on what that looks like, each individual needs to be addressed as a manager. It's not a blanket approach. It's about understanding an individual's needs, their career aspirations, or their personal needs, and then supporting that. And I think for me, That's been super important. And now as a dad, my perspective may have changed even more. And I think it's now about advocating for the industry and how do we get younger females into our industry? How do we expose them to what's capable?
Mm.
It's not just about being an engineer. It can be about anything because we have finance, we have commercial, we have HR, we have communications, we have engineering, we have science, we have safety, we have quality. There's so many different aspects and so many different career pathways. I don't think we're great at that as an industry. I think we're getting better. But now as a dad, I want to see my daughter see construction as an industry she would want to go into, and it needs to happen from an earlier age.
So tell me more around, you spoke around how it shifted for you when you became a dad. Did it shift for you wanting the opportunities for her? Did you also gain perspective with your wife and seeing the amount of work involved in raising children as well?
Yeah, so I shouldn't necessarily say it was just because of my daughter. My wife is a very successful project manager as well in the building and construction industry, and I've seen her battles and her struggles. Um, and what it made me realize is that maybe I live in a little sphere because I'm extremely fortunate with the company I work for and the bandwidth they give me to deliver on diversity. Every other company, it may not work the same way, or they may not operate the same way. They may not place the same value on diversity. So pre-kids, my focus was more on getting diversity in. As a dad now, it's more about how would I want my daughter to be treated, or how would I want her to be seen as a professional. Seeing my wife be a mum and how she's now transitioned from a professional project manager, now project managing our daughter.
I know. Yeah.
Because we know that it takes a lot to raise a child and run a family. And so, yeah, from my perspective, it's about, showing her that as a dad, like I can take my dad skills and her as a young female and being a leader for her, but also then delivering that in the private sector.
And with you said you've had people with you for 7 and 8 years and things like that. Have they gone through having families and things like that, some of the people that work for you during that time?
Surprisingly, I've only actually had one
Okay.
employee.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of my employees had a little boy a year ago.
Yep.
18 months ago. So yeah, we've been very supportive of her and her return to work. So, but I'm grateful that I've got my wife who is a really good sounding board, and obviously being a dad as well has helped me navigate that. And it's I think it allows you to have empathy, or the ability to be more sympathetic as well, as a leader, as a manager, to help females come back to the workforce and being supportive of that. And what I've realized is the construction industry as a whole can survive. Like COVID made us realize that we don't have to be so rigid and regimented around what a position is and time, whether that's in the office or elsewhere. I think what we've been able to demonstrate post-COVID, and maybe with flexible work arrangements, maybe not around necessarily having kids, but maybe other personal flexible work arrangements, has made me realize, and I think maybe people in our companies, that people can work part-time and achieve really great things, and don't have to necessarily be sitting in a seat at a project. And I think that's been a huge step change.
I think what I want to see as well, and I think this is something that's our role as well as recruitment professionals working in the sector, is we need to challenge when we're recruiting a role, and work with the team to actually figure out how can we make this role more inclusive and open to a wider talent pool. Because the reality is a lot of the time, and I've seen this so much recently, actually, a lot of the men that we've placed into roles, wives has come out of, we've been chatting, we might have placed them in an ops manager role or a project director role, and they said, oh, my wife would like to come back to work. The kids are ready to start school. And there's this real opportunity as an industry to get them back. I think a lot of the time we focus on, getting them into the industry, absolutely important, but also how do we get them back? And I think a lot of the work that you're doing in that space, and understanding you've gained from having, a wife in the sector that's, gone to have kids. There is a huge demographic out there. I can tell you about 5 off the top of my head right now that would love to come back on part-time. So I agree.
Yeah, and I just think too, like, what can be achieved part-time is so undervalued as a whole. And I just think I agree with you. There's a whole pool talent there that could be providing such value for us.
Yeah. And we're taking away the stigma from it as well of working part-time, being okay and open to say I work part-time or job share and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't mean you're less invested or committed. It just means you're essentially, I find it you just get really smart with your time, having work part-time. You just can't have probably as much water cooler chat, and you just got to get stuck into it and, get it done.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
So in terms of your work that you're doing in the sector, and it sounds like, you've grown up, learned a lot around your values and everything working regionally. You've now become a dad. You've grown in your career. What's the legacy you want to leave, like in the industry? If, say you come to retirement, which is still a long way away, right? But say you come to retirement and you look back and your daughter looks back on the work that you've done. What do you want to be remembered by, or what do you want to achieve?
Yeah, it's a hard question.
It's meant to stump you because it's a big one.
Yeah, it is. And look, if I had to be honest, I think that answer to that question's probably changed a lot over time. I've probably gone from project specific to regional specific, and now national focus, and now being a dad. So, I think for me, my legacy I'd like is that people were able to achieve their own career goals when working under myself and within the team. I'd like to hope they can achieve what they want to set out and achieve as part of their career. I think for me that would make me happy, and that would provide a really great reward for me that I was able to give people a great work culture, or maybe I was able to give them a great opportunity to achieve a great sustainability initiative. Maybe I was the person who, helped them achieve part-time work or get them back into the workforce. As a part-time mum, for me, that's the most rewarding part of my job. I actually get more value out of being a leader and building a team than I do out of environment sustainability initiatives. And some people might not like that, but that's what's kept me in this industry and in my role for so long. It's the reward of a team and a culture. So yeah, I hope that's my legacy.
I love that. No, I don't think that. Oh, I said it. I love that. Jeez. Yeah, I'm known for saying that. I nearly didn't say it through the whole episode. I know. I do love that because I think at the end of the day, that just shows that you're in the perfect position in a leadership role, because it is about empowering and building others. So it's a really honest answer. I appreciate it. We're going to move into the rocket round, which is a bit more fun.
Okay.
Not that this hasn't been fun, but this is just you don't know what's going to come. As opposed to before about running, when you didn't know that was coming either.
Stitched you up. It's all right. I'll get them. I'll run the fastest Bronco this year. Don't you worry.
Love it. So coffee or wine? Which do you prefer?
Coffee in the morning, wine at night.
Okay. A lot of people can't choose with that. Is there something?
Look, if I had to pick one, it would have to be coffee. People who know me, I'm all about the coffee, and my coffee machine. I'm very passionate.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give a plug. What's your favorite? Where's a cafe in Brisbane everyone should try? Because small businesses struggle, right? So what's some of your favourite places to go for a good bean?
So there's one on Carrara Street, which has just opened up, which is excellent.
Excellent.
I can't think of the name of the coffee shop.
That's all right.
And then Supernumero at Salisbury. Best coffee.
What's it called?
Supernumero at Salisbury.
Yeah, okay.
My daughter goes to the baby gym there.
Yeah.
So it's next
Good
door.
Coffee too.
Yeah, and it's beside a trail running shop, so it's perfect for me.
Oh, yeah, you can get into your outfit, grab your coffee and off you go.
Grab my crop top and my visor and I'm good to go with a coffee. So, they're two great coffee shops, and Delhi Dakota on Badminton Street.
Nice. You really do know your coffee. I love it. I love it. And what about what podcast do you listen to? You a podcast guy?
I love my podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rich Roll, excellent podcast.
Yeah.
Obviously, Andrew Huberman,
Yep.
a really great podcast. Mark Boris, so he's
Okay.
got two different types of podcasts. He's got the longevity wellbeing podcast,
Okay.
but also his finance.
Yep.
Excellent podcast.
Oh, awesome.
They're probably my top three.
Awesome.
That
They're
I
good ones to listen to.
Yes.
And what's your favourite holiday destination?
Favorite holiday destination? I've got a lot, but in Australia it would have to be Cape York.
Yeah.
Best holiday I've ever taken. Is driving from Brisbane to the tip with
Yep.
my daughter and wife last year.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Did you camp? Caravan?
Yeah, caravan. We have an off-road caravan.
Yeah.
But we've done it in a tent before in a swag. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, hands down, if you haven't detached and you want to get away with no phone reception or emails and you want to meet some great people who are there to just explore and be curious and have a great time, you've got to do Cape York.
How long did it take you?
We took 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But you could do it in 3.
Yep.
Just Old Telegraph Road Track and Corrugation Bar, Lions Den Hotel, just iconic locations. Like I said, detached, so people are forced to talk to each other. And you're all there for the right reasons. You're there to explore and see probably one of the last frontiers. Yep, dirt roads.
Awesome. Sounds like a great trip. We got a caravan, so I might go there.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think I asked you, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
I guess that'd
We
feel.
have a schnauzer.
Okay, cool.
Love dogs from cattle farms.
Yeah. And what makes you feel like you're home?
It's got to be outside. So home for me is flying back to North Queensland. But yeah, if my wife always says I'm happiest on the water. So yeah, it's got to be on the water fishing or just boating, or being outside. Yeah, I'm just, and I think that's why I've ended up where I have. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on as a guest. It was a lot of fun, and I think you covered so much in the episode as well. So, if people want to connect with you on LinkedIn, that's a way to follow you and learn more about your career and where you came from as well. Anything else no other websites or books that you've published, Jock, yet?
No websites or books, but yes, please reach out on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit hopeless on LinkedIn, and I don't really have social media, so I can be a little bit slow on the replies, but that is the one platform. So.
Well, that's why we got this podcast, right?
That's
You're
right,
an enigma. We can't find you.
Yeah.
But if you listen to this podcast, you're going to get the inside about Jock that nobody else gets. So there you go. Thank you for listening. And as always, like, subscribe, rate, review. And please, if you think that there's somebody that's listened to the episode that's going to get something out of it, please share. And if you got a lot out of the episode, share it with Jock. We often love hearing from our guests. They get a lot of personal messages and things like that of people that have taken something personal away from them for the episode. And if you hear it and you enjoyed it, please share on LinkedIn. That's probably our main platform to get more people to listen to the podcast. Thanks for coming as a guest.
Thank you.
That was great. If this episode gave you new insights, don't let them go to waste. Take action. Apply them. And if you want more insider strategies from the best in construction and infrastructure, make sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the leaders who open the most doors aren't waiting for opportunities, they're building them.